O dabar išpildom 3 karaliaus norus. Prenumeruojam, sekam ir spaudžiam patinka.
Bet mes taip mylim moterį šitam stream'e. Gerai, ne viskas gerai, galim žiūrėti video. Gerai. RIOT'o naujas MMO, gerai. RIOT'o naujas MMO. Aš labai laukiu šito game. Mato, RIOT'as yra patapęs naujasis Blizzardas tipo, kuris realiai kuria gerus produktus. Jie turi absurdiškai didelį kapitalą. Jie išmoko kaip game'us išlaikyti fresh and popular labai gerai. Jie padaro gan nušlifuotus game'us, kas buvo Blizzardo vienas iš pagrindinių tokių pardavimo taškų, selling points, I guess. Tai jie daro gerus cinematikus, turi labai gerą lorą, pačio lolo kaip pasaulio, ten visais Bilgewater, Zion, tais zonom, fakcijom. Išleido Arcane serialą, kur realiai pakoverino gan mažą konfliktą iš jų viso to loro, nes ten konfliktų karų yra labai daug, bet jie pakoverino gan lokalią tokią lokalų konfliktą ir tas serialas buvo ypatingai geras. Netgi tiem, kurie LoL'o nėra žaidę gyvenimą, ypatingai geras serialas, ten awardų laimėjo ir viską. Tai viskas yra paruošta geram MMO game'ui, su geru pasauliu, su gerom fakcijom, su geru loru, gerais įvykiais. Tai man labai įdomu būtų, kaip įgyvendins visą tą. Tai dabar čia yra, kas actually jau dabar padaryta yra.
In the past, MMOs were regarded as the godfathers of games. They were the peak of what developers could accomplish. Even though, looking back, that's a fairly subjective thing to say. Everyone knew MMOs had the power to create cult following, but also everyone knew making MMOs was hard. On average, an MMO has to spend at least 6 years in the baking before it can get anywhere near being good. But that didn't stop companies from jumping onto the bandwagon anyway. And soon we could see dozens of new MMOs, all releasing in 2008, all being called the WoW killers. Spoiler alert.
Būna draugam, kurie apie LoL'ą nieko nusimano, aiškinu lorą. Alright.
None of them did that. And unfortunately, we can feel the ripple effects even now. It got to a point where every time a new MMO is announced, we all think the same thing. Oh. Anyway, when you're working on an MMO, you have to respect 3 pillars. Gameplay is king, social interactions matter, and the world setting is important. When Riot announced their MMO, it became clear that 2 of the pillars are being respected, and the third one is already done. When it comes to the gameplay, it is currently in the hands of Ghostcrawler, someone who's been working on WoW during its best times, and someone who got a reputation for hating boomkins and loving mages. When it comes to the social interactions, it is a dance between the developers and the players. A dev can guide players towards social interactions, or they can annihilate them. And after that, the players usually find their own fun inside the MMO. From that point on, the devs should do everything in their power to support the players having fun in their own way. And finally, when it comes to the world of an MMO, in Riot's case, it's done. And it's been finished for quite a few years now. In fact, the world of Riot's MMO is in such a good state. They already have the continents, the zones, the cultures, and the races.
True.
And to a lesser degree, every zone already has its own storyline. Now, of course, unless you follow the lore of League of Legends, you wouldn't know about this. And that's why I decided to make this video. I want to show you all the zones we are going to see in the MMO and what sorts of quests we are going to do there. So, for the purpose of this video, I will assume you have no idea what League of Legends is about. You have no idea what the universe is about, but you like MMOs, your hairline is receding, and you have a crippling fear of Nintendo 64 controllers. To which I might add, why do you think I'm wearing hats? But now, without further ado, let's have a look at all the zones in Riot's MMO.
Net aš visų jaučiu neišvardinčiau tikrai.
The world of League of Legends. Right now, the world is separated into 10 main regions. But these 10 regions don't cover all the land on the map, so there are some mini-zones in between them. And the lore already revealed that there is gonna be another continent further to the east. That definitely sounds like a future expansion to me. In fact, it would be foolish to release all of these regions at launch. You can easily turn half of these into...
Release it at launch! Release it! viską jau žinom. Release it all at launch. Dadėkit naują vėliau. Bet release it all at launch. Come on.
Separate expansions. And because a lot of people already know and love these regions, the hype behind these expansions would be big. With that said, I know a lot of you would like to play as Shrimans or Ionians. And now you may be cursing me for suggesting that these would be expansions. But the lore can justify giving you these nations as playable races without having their regions. I'll show you how Riot can pull this off in a bit. First, let's talk about the region.
Blia, aš labai tikiuosi, šiaip aš irgi, žinok. Šiaip nebūtų pas blogiausias dalykas man, tas izometrika, jo ta perspektyva, bet aš žiauriai pasiilgstu WoW kontrolinimo ir WoW pasaulio. Aš žiauriai pasiilgstu tab aiminimo. Yra kažkas labai satisfying ir labai patogu su tab kontrolu, tipo, kai valdai savo personažų su tabu aimini, tas Vovo, jie taip gerai tą nailino, ypač vėliau jau, kur dadėjo dar tų funkcijų, kaip jis veikia. Jis toks intuityvus ir toks geras. I fucking love that style. Bet realiai tokių gėjimų vapšė nėra. Tai norėčiau, bet ką žina Riotas darys tą. Aš actually bejoju. Man atrodo, eis labiau Diablo, Lost Arkos ir tokių kelių, tokios perspektyvos.
Riot's MMO has to start with the northern continent. This entire continent is called Valoran. Not Valorant, Valoran. And this is where the absolute core of this world is. The two main regions here are Demacia and Noxus. They are the two big rivals equivalent to the Horde and the Alliance. While I would like to say that Demacia is your classic normie human region, it's not really true. Runeterra doesn't really have a normal place. There is something cool happening in every region. And Demacia has racism. Okay, maybe not racism because Demacia doesn't mind Yordles or Minotaurs, but they really hate mages. That's because in the past, their rivals almost annihilated half of the world using magic. And so Demacia was built inside a magic-absorbing forest. Therefore, Demacia is a really cool place where you can hide from magic. When it comes to the visuals of the zone, you can see a lot of lush fields, it is surrounded by mountains, but the iconic part of Demacia are the buildings. They are made of petricite, which is a combination of stone and the magic-absorbing wood. Because these ancient magic-absorbing trees were grey, all the buildings have a marble-like appearance. And yes, given what material they are using, all the buildings in Demacia also absorb magic. So should a mage visit this region, let's just say it's gonna be a painful experience. On top of this, let's not forget that Demacians can weaponize petricite. They can turn it into petricite steel, which gives you your classic anti-magic weapons, and you can sculpt petricite constructs which wake up after absorbing magic. Simply said, these guys just really don't like magic. The irony is, they've been absorbing it for years now. And this is where the story would kick in.
Tipo, jo, čia irgi, tu žinai, kai tu pastatai tą, pastatą, kuris sugeria magic, galio, legit, ir tada, reanimuoji, tai ar čia nėra magija jau, tipo, tai, excuse me, bet dar įdomu, ar bus tankai, healeriai, DPS-ai, tipo, supportai, tipo, DPS-ai. Nes jeigu bus, tai, šiaip tada būtų tankų visose fakcijose, bet čia iš karto aiškus būtų pavyzdžiai galio, tipo, kur tankai tokie. But yeah, anyway.
You see, the Demacians are so afraid of magic, they founded the Mage Seeker Order. This is an order of people who hunt mages, they throw them into prison, and they torture them until their body gives up on magic.
Nice.
So yes, being a mage is a crime in Demacia. The thing is, people still get naturally born with magical abilities. You can't stop it from happening. So not only are there mages
obviously
in the royal court, right now there is a mage civil war.
Kaip apie tai kalbėjom, kad greičiausiai visi bus tie čempionai, istorijos dalis, loro dalis, mes žaisim kaip random gyventojai toj vietoj, tipo, ne kažkurį lolo personažą, žinai.
Happening in Demacia.
Aš kalbėjau iš tos pusės, kad, jie kariai, tipo, magijos nenaudoja, tai tada lieka fiziniai labiau kariai, I guess. Tai turi būti tada ir tie tankai, brūzeriai, melee DPS, visi tokie, tokio tipo. Aišku, bus išimčių visokių, nes, gal tankas ten bus ir paskui kokie ten primal, ten bilge water turės savo tanką, visi turės ten savo tankus, tipo, jeigu bus tos rolės klasikinės, I don't know. Bet jo, jeigu atimi magiją, tai labai, limituotai tada, gali spelus kastinti, tai viskas bus paremta, turėtų būti paremta abilities tavo, tipo, tavo skillais, o ne magijom arba ten žodžiu. Trūksta lietuviškų žodžių, kad tą paaiškinti.
This is gonna be the core story. Mages trying to overthrow racist leadership following old laws. So the main enemy NPCs might be mages and witches. But I know
100% turės whirlwind spin to win.
There will be plenty of boars to kill here too. Or at least there are loads of wolves here as well as stags. And we can't forget the iconic Demasian raptors. But further to the south we might find some crag beasts, tiny woolly elephants, and yes, of course in the Argent Mountains there are also dragons. Loads and loads of dragons.
Nes jie nėra magic, bet viskas gerai.
The capital city of Demacia is called the Great City of Demacia. Sounds dumb, but Runeterra was not the first one to come up with this. But thankfully the other regions are a bit more creative with their names. So now let's move away from the normie region and let's have a look at the badass region. Noxus. If you're planning on playing a warrior with oversized weapons and overcompensating lush hair, this is the region for you. This place actually has a long and badass history, but we really don't have the time to explain it now. So just know that originally it was built by the most badass warrior in the history of Runeterra. This motherfucker literally died on a mountain of corpses. And after he died, he was too angry to stay dead, so he just became the god of the underworld. When this guy lived, he built the Immortal Bastion, which is to this day the largest in the entirety of Runeterra. And currently he is banished underneath the Immortal Bastion, but only a few people know about it. So, that's a few...
Patikėsiu, nes čia yra Noxus, o ne Nexus, blėt, nevykėli. Dirb prie savo Nexuso, kai galėjai dirbti prie Noxuso.
Raid boss. Anyway, the Immortal Bastion is the capital city of the Noxian Empire, with Noxus being one of the most brutal nations in Runeterra. It is brutal because the nation is surrounded by rocky earth. It is hard to grow plants here. So Noxians are forced into conquering surrounding land for resources to survive. That's why when you go to the map, you can notice that the Noxian territory is all over the place. It's because these are all the places Noxus has already conquered.
Although, when I say it like that, you may imagine Noxus brutally raiding everything. But that's not true. They like to absorb the surrounding nations into their empire. After all, it's just more human resources. Most of the time, they only remove the royalty and they let the leaderless people join their empire. And that's because Noxus values strength above all. And rulers tend to not be good fighters. This is what you can see in the After Victory cinematic. They kill the king because he was weak and let everyone else join them. Fun fact, conquering nations is so iconic for Noxus, they have their own saying. Kill them until they are family. So when it comes to the quests of Noxus, it is most likely going to be helping the Empire expand its territory. Although, this region has its own unique enemies too. Inside the Immortal Bastion, there is a cult known as the Black Rose. This cult is connected to the darkest of magics. So be ready to fight Hemomancers, witches, demons, and the... What is a fucking Hemomancer? Hemomancer is the school of magic for manipulating the blood of oneself. Oh, okay. Vladas, žodžiu. Okay,
Grey Legion, which is an army of soldiers revived with blood magic to fight for the Empire again. And when it comes to
blood magic
bear asses, here we have the native Drakehounds and Basilisks. Now, while Noxus and Demacia are the main rivals here, both of them are also constantly repelling raids from the north. So now, let's have a look at the Freljord. Just like pretty much any region on Runeterra, Freljord has a long history. But for the purpose of this video, Just know that the maddening old gods known as the Watchers of the Void, who want to devour the entire reality only because it keeps waking them up, once tried to breach into reality here. They almost succeeded because they tricked the Ice Witch Lysandra into helping them. Fortunately, she realized how wrong she was, and she managed to freeze half of the kingdom with the Watchers still beneath them. So these days, the Ice Witch is the only person holding back the end of reality by keeping the Watchers frozen.
Cool.
So at some point in the future, you bet one of these woken up frozen Watchers is gonna be a raid boss. Now, when it comes to the NPCs, this is where things get diverse. First of all, remember that the Freljord is brutally cruel. Everything is frozen, and survival is everything. So the first enemy here would be the wildlife. From Rhymefangs to Yetis to Druvasks to Elnuks to Mammoths to the worst of them all, Poros. Next we are going to fight the Freljordians themselves. There are three main tribes here. The Avarosans, who are quite peaceful, the Winter's Claw, who are quite brutal, and the Frostguard, Lysandra's followers who hold back the Watchers. And let me tell you, these guys have some badass armor. Among the notable tribes there are also the Ursine, which are shamans who worship the Volibear, the primal god of the wild who slowly turns his worshippers into twisted animalistic monstrosities. Speaking of which, yes, there are also the primal gods of Freljord. And finally, we need to talk about the Iceboard. When the Watchers tried to arrive here, they tainted the ice around them. This special ice is called the True Ice. And it is so dangerous, you literally die if you touch it.
Cool.
However, the Watchers also tainted some people, giving them the ability to touch the ice. It is still extremely painful for them to hold a true ice weapon, but at least they can survive it. These people are known as the Iceborn. But people were not the only things that were tainted. There are also ice trolls, some of whom are also Iceborn. To be honest, these guys were made to have their own dungeon. But there are also some animals that were twisted by the Watchers. And Lysandra is even twisting some beings herself to make them serve her. So overall, Freljord is gonna have a lot of cool warriors, shamans, and horrors. So these would be the three regions on the main continent.
Jau vien šitos trys zonos ir šitos trys fakcijos, čia yra years and years of content, tipo, šitos konfliktus, kiek visko galima prikurti. Netgi vienam šitam pasauliui. Čia būtų wow gal su 3 fakcijom, ne su 2. Tipo, kiek čia jau daug visko yra ir kokios tos kultūros ir kiek juose personažų išlolo. It's fucking insane, kokie pasaulį per tos 12 metų subildino iš esmės.
But this place is actually so big it can easily make the base world of the game. Especially since there are a bunch of smaller regions in between them. There is Nokmerch, full of witches, Argent Mountains with their dragons, Tokugol with void monsters, Dalamor Plains with him, and so much more. But from here, you can cleverly set up the expansions because of how well everything is interconnected. So now, let's have a look at the continent to the east called Ionia. Ionia has a very close connection.
Realiai jo, kai sakiau viską, kad reikia releasinti, jo, reikia daryti biškai mažiau, nes, tipo, čia, jeigu tas pasaulis būtų didelis, jis per didelis būtų. Žmonės niekad nesustiktų, žinai, jo, čia turi būti expansionai vėliau, tipo, introducinti. Tipo, gal būtų logiška padaryti, tipo, priešistorę šitų regionų, žinai, konfliktą ir viską. Ir tada dadedam kitą regioną, kai jisai gal iškil, tipo, pagal orą, aš nežinau, kas po ko, bet, tipo, nes, per daug, tiesiog, actually per daug, nes Vovas pagalvokit, tos 2 zonos pradžioje ir paskui visas rasdavo ten, tipo, papildoma sala, dar kažkas, whatever, tipo, arba ten outlandai tie, bet realiai šičia, tų subzonų bus, miestas, čia zona, čia zona, čia zona, čia zona, žinai, čia zona ir ten, gerai, kaip Vovo standartais kelsias, levelį bus pora, max level zonos, ten 3 raidai kokie ir panašiai, čia viskas telpa laisvai. Tipo, kitaip būtų žiauriai per daug. Varytum dirbti RIOT, jeigu pasiūlytų, ką pasiūlyti dirbti. Aš nieko nemoku, aš nevykėlis esu. Ir aš nenoriu dirbti. Aš geriau noriu nedirbti.
Because of how well everything is interconnected. So now, let's have a look at the continent to the east called Ionia. Ionia has a very close connection to Noxus. You can only guess why. It's because Noxians once tried to conquer it all during an event simply called the Invasion of Ionia. This was a horrible war full of using children as soldiers because...
Palauk, ar čia Irelija buvo? Irelija iš... Irelija yra iš... Kur jinai yra? Ainai Noxian buvo. Bet lygtais taip prisimenu, kad Ionians laikė ją captive, atrodo. Ir jinai labai jauna būdama ten ištrūko ir generolas užmušė. Lygtais toks buvo jos ten... Anyway, nesvarbu, labai daug ten tų visokių yra. Pagal lore, nors ir yra detalus veiksmų scenarijus. Plačia klausimas buvo. Ir čia, no joke, vat koks dabar yra mapas ir lore state yra tiesiog golden. Tai nebent darytų truputėlį į ateitį, kas turi su problemų. Tiek, kiek dabar yra lore, jeigu mes pradėsim, nuo biškį anksčiau, ten tipo 10 mečių galite MMO kurt. Bet neišvengiamai, tai turėtų praplėsti ir panašiai. Bet, jo, visą laiką yra rizika, kad į ateitį, kai kūrė naują, sugadintų ar dar kažką. Tipo visą laiką, bet jo, sakau, čia tiek, kiek dabar yra lore, gali nieko apšė ten naujo iš esmės nekurti ir turėti 10 metį ten kontento. Ne taip gerai, bet geriausia tiesiog turėti pinigų. Aš turiu pinigų. Cosplayerių, jeigu pasiūlyti dirbti, čiuptum. Oi, šičia tai tikrai. Man labai patinka apsirengti kaip 15 metę mergaitę, tai tikrai eičiau, tiesiog iškart net neklausčiau, žinai. Nukirtas Wayne ranką, Jo, ištrūko iš captivity, Wayne'ui ranką nukirto, jo, tenais. Užkiek man picos. The fuck? Laikykis dietos, senas storas pirdžiau.
Thought Ionians wouldn't fight back against children and chemical weapons. Lots and lots of chemical weapons. Speaking of which, remember Singed from Arcane? He's the guy who chemically devastated Ionia.
Kas per bangin chatą, šią demandas visą laiką tą daro, kurva.
Eventually, Noxus failed, but they kept their small controlled territories. So the first quest here could be simply boarding a ship, sailing over, and exploring the place.
Ta prasme, atvaryk į Kauną, nusivesiu picos ir alaus nupirksiu. Bet čia užsakinėt per namus, tai what the fuck nahui. Fleksina šaibom, jep. Tiek daug pinigų turi, žinok, seni. Tiek daug, blėt, maudaus piniguose tiesiog, matai. Iš mano šitų nuostabių tapetų tiesiog aš maudaus piniguose.
Is for the Noxian Empire. Now, when it comes to Ionia itself, the place gets mystical. Everything here is alive and connected to the spirit of nature. And I mean everything, from the animals to the people to the buildings. Everything is alive. So if you anger Mother Nature, your house can twist and strangle you.
Ionia. Plačia apie Ioniją visą? Jo.
Imagine how Mother Nature fought against Noxians. Usually a river came alive to drown them. That's why all the buildings here look like they were woven from wood. It's because they were. With nature magic, people let nature build their houses.
Not gonna lie, man visi kontentai patinka. Gal Demasė mažiausiai patinka. Kažkokie snobai, kurie magijos nemėgsta, bet Freljordas, nuostabu, blėt, iš tikro. Noxian, Ionia, savo, žiauriai fucking cool. Žiauriai cool.
It also means that sometimes your house can just walk away. When it comes to the NPCs here, obviously there is gonna be a lot of nature spirits.
Iki Piltover dar nedėjom, palauk. Bet jo, sakau, dauguma tų fakcijų, yra kažkom arba įdomios, sakau, tik Demasė, man kažkokie fucking cringe lordai, mes nenorim magijos, bet mes turim magiją ir absorbinam ją, wait a second, tipo, durneliai, jie labai elitistai jau jaučiasi iš karto kapą. Bet jo, aš nežinau, kurį dabar reiktų rinktis regioną, kuriam, pavyzdžiui, startint reiktų. Nes, pavyzdžiui, Vove, aš tikiu, kad ir čia panašiai turėtų padaryti levinimo gal experience, Vove buvo pretty nice. Tu pasirinkęs fakciją, realiai pradedi levelinti skirtingoje zonoje. Ten undeadas būsi, vienoje zonoje, Taurenas kitoje, ten ir keletas tų fakcijų, tipo Humanas kitoje. Tai buvo antiek magiška. Man yra sunku apibūdinti, ant kiek Vavas pakeitė viską ir ant kiek tai magiškas geimas buvo tiem, kurie nežaidė. Ypač tuo metu, kai nebuvo nieko panašaus ir tu Skūrė personažą humaną, ten dvorfą kokį, miestas, unikali architektūra, unikali aplinka, unikalūs monstrai. Tada galų gale bišk pažaidė, pasikeli levelį, nuėjai ten kokį dungeoną ir su valtim persikeli su bautu į Beranus, orkų tą vietą. Visiškai kitkas. Miestas visiškai kitoks, architektūra kitokia, monstrai kitokie, kitas pasaulis. Tada su undeadu pradedi žaisti, dar kitas pasaulis. Ir tada keliaujant, tu prakeliauji į tą kitą aplinką, kurią, čia humanai buvo, čia jau humano aplinka, žinai. Tipo, tas pasaulis buvo ten, my god, it was fucking brilliant. Ir tą, pavyzdžiui, orkų pasaulyje sukūrė labai paskubom. Todėl ten trūksta pastatų ir viską tokios lygumos ir dykumos daugiau. Bet tai taip gerai atitiko jų vibe, nu, kad, tipo, it was perfect. Anyway. Jiem gal magijos sankcijas uždėti, jo grinai, aš sakau už legalizaciją ir dekriminalizaciją magijos ir apmokestinimą, taip. Viskas šlies valgydavau, kas valgoma. Aš žaidžiau Human Hunterį, bet tada galų gale Orc Hunterį susikūriau ir Orco Hunterį žaidžiau. Bet pats pirmas, man atrodo, kai Open Betoj pasidariau, ten ir porą savaičių turėjau, man atrodo, ten buvo Dwarfas pas mane. Ar Humanas. Aš net neprisimenu. Taip senai čia buvo prieš 20 metų, nu, nežinau. Tai tipo, I don't even remember. Bet jo, Vovas buvo visiška magija. Jeigu gerus dalykus iš Vovo nupizdintų, iš Lost Arkos, iš visų tų modernių geimų ir padarytų savo, nu, čia gali būti, sakau, geimas ateinančiam 20 metų, nes pažiūrėkite RIOT geimus. LOLas 13 metų jau gyvuoja ir vienas populiariausias geimas planetoje, jeigu net populiariausias, nu, tipo, iš tų PC, tai tarp populiariausias, nes tam atrodo sviravo kažkada. Bet, tipo, I don't know. Please nesupiskit šitą MMO, nes tai gali, tipo, toks geras experience. Tikiuosi nereikės 10 maltų kurtis, kad matosi, nes jo, šito nenoriu. Lost Arką dar pažaidžiu kažkiek, nors, bet iš tikrųjų Lost Arkui neprivalai to daryti. Aš net neturiu ką veikti, tipo, aš net, mano altas jau pasiruošęs, tai yra mano mainas pasiruošęs visiems įmanomam kontentam ateityje jau praktiškai. Ir tiek dar laiko yra. Ir aš jau dailių nedarau senai su niekom. Ten kartais su jais raidus tos pavalau, tipo, nu, su altais, ten kartais chaosą prabėgu su jais, bet, tipo, savaitė būna, kad net nieko nedarau dailių, nes man nereikia tų matsų, aš ten turiu stopalą, ten štukom, visko, tipo, goldo irgi, ten šiam štukui savaitę gauni. Tipo, tu visų tų matsų gali nusipirkti belenkiek, aš galėčiau tą savo personažą kelti dabar turbūt iki begalybės, nu ne iki begalybės, bet tipo, tiesiog kontento nėra, kad man reiktų to, tai jeigu tu žaidži labai casual, tai tau realiai tu nieko tau nereikia daryti irgi ten, nei tų altų dabar reikėti, nei ką, nes pamatė, kad vakarų kultūroje tie altai nėra pati geriausia idėja turbūt, mažai kas jų turi daug ir panašiai, tai iš karto davė, nu, pakoregavo tiek, kiek resursų reikia turbūt ir kaip dažnai kontentas eina palyginus, kiek resursų gauni, kad realiai tu netgi pusiau užmygęs galėtum tą visą kontentą žaisti. Please Riot don't have any sexual harassment allegations. Tai pala, čia jau jie turėjo belenkiek, bet, nu, netokių kaip Blizzardas. New World Faction shit galėtų paimti jį. Ne, nieko iš New Worldo, man atrodo, nereikia jiems vokti. New Worldas nieko neturėjo geresnio už WoWą gal, tik potencialo daug, bet jie jokių sistemų realiai, jie kaip tik jie ėmė sistemas iš RuneScape'o, iš World of Warcraft, tipo jie vogė sistemas. Bet nemanau, kad New Worldas labai kažką sukūrė patys. Ką to labiau LoL'o ar MMORPG galėtų sukurti, tipo, ar, nu, pavogti. Ne, nėra šansų, kad būt kaip Diablo Immortal, nėra jokių šansų. Iš RIOT'o.
But be ready to also face local Ionians, Blade Masters, Shadow Cultists, Murderers, and Ninjas. Both good, bad, and the in-between. But finally, there is also one more enemy that we could face. The furries. That's right, this race is...
Oh my fucking god. Šitas interpas. The furries, bet tada arī jungia. Okay.
Known as...
Pavyzdžiui, kur Miss Fortune yra? Kur tas Kekšių lendas? Where is Miss Fortune from? Ar jinai iš Bilgewater? Bilgewater, jo. Blet. Piratai taigi. Jūs jau parašėt.
Devastaya. They are half humans and half magical animals. And yes, canonically, the species was born in exactly the way you are thinking. But to be fair, the Vastaya are quite cool and they
Wait
are
a second.
the way.
How was the species born?
And yes, canonically, the species was born in exactly the way you are thinking. But to be fair, the Vastaya are quite cool and they are definitely gonna be a playable race. Just like Yordles, who also like Ionia a lot. Lastly, after Noxians ravaged Mother Nature, demons started occupying all the places filled with misery and doubt. So that's gonna be a nice bonus enemy. So yes, the exploration of Ionia and the raid on the Shadow Order could be a really cool...
Some bimbo sailor fucked a butterfly. Yep, pretty much. Atplaukė į landą, sako, o čia furiai, kurie šiek tiek resemble žmonės. Let's fuck them.
Cool first expansion. But it's definitely not Riot's only option, because we can also go south to Piltover and Zone. These are the ones people will know about, simply because this is where Arcane plays.
Yep.
Piltover and Zone
Skaityk.
are simply because...
Skaityk, jo realiai, ant kiek maža pasaulio vieta realiai tas serialas. Aš sakau, ten ant tiek trumpas time spanas su mažu lokaliu konfliktu. O visą sezoną padarė serialą ir jis buvo nuostabus, tipo. Visiems rekomenduoju pažiūrėti, žiauriai geras.
Piltover and Zone are two massive cities located one above the other. And they are so massive they could easily be turned into their own playable zones. They are both focusing on futuristic technology powered up by magic of the Hextech gemstones. Using this magic, they can power up anything from guns to augmented limbs to vehicles.
Žinot, kas turi būti dideli miestai. Žinot, kaip anksčiau būdavo miestai, ne Diablo 2, pavyzdžiui, prisiminti. Įeini į miesto zoną ir kvadratas, čia vendorius, čia vendorius, čia vendorius, čia NPC, čia du šeimai, viskas. Nu, tipo. Dabar, kai, toks pasaulis, tai miestas yra didelis. Tai reiškia, jis tikrai turi padalintas į daug dalių, ten viduj turi būti levelinimas į questų, pilna kontento, netgi to miesto viduj, tipo. Tipo, turbūt būtų labiausiai apmaudu, jeigu padarytų miestą, kur tu įeini ir ten nieko ypatingai daug nėra, gan greit praeini ir, tipo, praranda savo dydį, tipo. Tai neišvengiamai šitam žaidime turėtų būti miestai, kuriuose bus actually daug kontento, daug ką daryti pačiuose net miestuose, tipo. Nes jie negali būti maži, jie niekaip negali būti maži. Jeigu įsivaizduosi ten į kokio Orgrimarą įeini, jis nėra labai didelis, tipo, bet jis, didelis. Zonos skirtingos, čia magų korteris, čia šitų korteris, ten bet kokį miestą nuėjus, tai yra daug questų, netgi dungeonai tose miestuose kai kuriuose ten. Tai tipo, neišvengiamai pats miestas turi būti ypatingai svarbus. Tai, yeah. Net kaip įdomu ir smalsu, kaip jie actually viską įgyvendins, nes čia grandiozinis, tipo, dalykas. Tikrai turi pradžiai lokaliai būti galbūt nuo pradinių ten to Freljordo ir panašiai. Gal iš viso tik vieną jie zoną padarys. Ir, pavyzdžiui, po pusmečio arba ten išleis kitą zoną. Nes, paimkim Freljordą arba Noxusą arba Demasę, tu tą vieną zoną realiai padarai ir ten vien miestas, aplinkinės zonos jau gali belenkiek kontentų. Tai jeigu du padarai, tu jau turi pilną game ir tada plėti. Taip, neįsivaizduoju, kaip jie tą skalę darys, nes techniškai gali miestą padaryti, kuriame bus tipo didelis miestas ar panašiai, bet 3 vietos, 3 NPC ir tas miestas, tu ateini, tai tipo kažką padaryti išeini, žinai. Bet gali būti miestas, kuriame bus 10 skirtingų zonų ir visas geimas. Tai tipo čia labai klausimas. Vat kaip jie tą darytų, žinai, praplėtimą galų gal, jeigu plėst, ar tu turėtum, tipo, rerolint, ar tiesiog kaip adventureris iš vienos zonos į kitą, eitum tiesiog savo leveliu, tipo, I have no idea, kaip jie tą įgyvendintų, tipo, ir čia sakau, čia, tikiu, kad Riotas kažką galbūt sugalvos ir išspręstos tokius klausimus, tipo, kaip iš tikrųjų geriausiai approachinti tokius. Nes iš tikrųjų labai daug klausimų kyla, kaip įgyvendinta. Ir gali tą padaryti, nes realiai šičia dalykas yra, kur čia toks dalykas yra, kur realiai tu gali labai daug, jeigu mesi tiesiog pinigų į tai. Jeigu daug žmonių pasamdys ir tipo tos questus, kad sukurtų zoną, tipo, čia nėra pats sudėtingiausias laiko ir resursų, tai klausimas, kiek jis skirs ir kaip norės tą visą gyventi, bet jo. Nėra jokio release dato, bet Blogiausia, kad jie gali padaryti tai pradinę eriją yra tas visiškai nežinomas content. Logiška būtų, kad gali būti pradinės erijos, kad tu į miestą įeisi kaip World of Warcraft, tik po kažkiek laiko. Kad tu spavninsi gal kaip random žmogus, iš tos maždaug šalia, žinai, miesto, kaip ten sakė, tos zonos tarp miestų ir tada, žinai, levelinsi ir jau kai pasieks kažkokį levelį, įeisi tą miestą ir tave gal supažindins, kad tu ten padėjai kokį konfliktą lokalų išspręs, supažindins kokiu generolu, tu, žinai, klaimbinsi tą ladder, viskas taip įmanoma. Tai nebūtų blogas dalykas. Tai actually, man atrodo, net preferable dalykas būtų, nes WoW'as tą labai gerai padarė. Pradedi grinai ten už kokį, nežinau, už kokį tauriną pradedi, mažam settlement'e šalia, ten iš random tribe, po truputį augi, padedi, tada nueini į didesnį miestą, tada žiūrėk į didelį miestą, tada po biškai darai questus, jau pašnekai ir su kokiu generolu, žinai, taip, toks pasaulio skleidimas pradedi nuo nieko, žinai. Tiek problema dažniausiai būna su to pradedi nuo nieko, kad galų gale labai gan greitai viskas perauga į tu, naunėjimas, gelbėjai pasaulį, gelbėjai visatą visą. Ir kiek žinau, bando žaidimai nuo to biškai gal atsitraukti, bet labai sunku padaryti, nes visą laiką stakes tipo vis didėja, tai I don't fucking know. Kokio didžio LOL pasaulis compared to mūsų, net nežinočiau, kaip lyginti tokį reiktų. Aš manau, kad mes būsim tiesiog gyventojai, o tos zonos bus kaip klanai kažkas panašiai. Tas pasaulis, aš kaip suprantu, turėtų būti tiesiog egzistuojantis savo konfliktais, o mes būsim atrandom žmogus iš backgroundų, iš random šeimos gimė, žinai. Ir tada mes auksim per rankus, į kurią tą zoną ir whatever, man atrodo, taip turėtų būti. O gal ne, I have no idea. Kad jis bus levelimasis, ne, aš abejoju, kad jisai būtų. Dabar yra tiek content ir tiek zonų, kad tas naujas bus ateities, o ne dabar, kad levelintis. Tikrai abejoju. Nes dabar yra per daug, ką galima jau išnaudoti, nėra prasmės dabar kurti, kai nereikia kurti, reikia išnaudoti tą, kas yra.
Well, it is simply futuristic Victorian era. And unfortunately, there wouldn't be much of enemy variety. We would likely fight the rich houses of Piltover and their deadly assassins, with the occasional thief on the streets, corrupt wardens, and the occasional rogue steam golem. But things get a bit more interesting in the undercity known as Zone. Zone is the dirty underbelly covered in thick toxic smoke. Because the majority of people are poor here, they developed a cheaper alternative to Hextech called Chemtech. This artificial green stuff can power up cheaper limb replacements, as well as highly unstable weaponry. Zone is also controlled by the Chem Barons, which are obviously gonna be the main enemy here. But on the side, we may also meet some chemical mutants, unstable constructs, as well as some mass murderers and people who hunt down mass murderers. And funnily enough, at the very bottom of Zone itself, there are the hidden ruins of an ancient city full of traps. That is obviously gonna be a cool dungeon. So yes, there is not much more that I can add here. Piltover and Zone were simply explored in Arcane. So if you like the series, you are gonna like this place. From here, we can travel further south to Shurima. Shurima used to be a massive empire that ruled the world. But after the emperor got betrayed by his best friend, the entire empire collapsed. This region is a massive desert with the occasional city near a river. In the center of the region, there is the Sun Disk, a colossal piece of star metal that has the power to reflect celestial magic. The Shurimans use this celestial magic to turn their best soldiers into the Ascended, also known as the Golden God Warriors. However, these God Warriors wouldn't make a great enemy here. That's because after the Emperor had died, the Ascended started fighting for leadership. And slowly, after learning how to use blood magic to gain the edge, they morphed their own bodies and became the Dargon. Twisted, blood-frenzied monsters that would certainly make really cool raid bosses. Besides this ancient evil, Shurima is also full of its own animals, raiders, dune scavengers,
Dykuma ir piramidės visokios toks
void
vibas.
creatures. That's because to the south, there used to be a kingdom known as Ikathia that wanted to destroy the Shuriman Empire. So, they asked the Watchers for help. You can imagine how that went. the Watchers sent through some void beasts that consumed Icathia and polluted Shurima to this day. To fight back the void, Shurima does have a lot of hidden tombs around with hidden god warrior weapons. Not to mention that Shurima also has a circle of time mages who are trying to freeze the void in time. Now, as I mentioned near the beginning of the video, even if Shurima becomes an expansion, they can still easily make Shurimans a playable race because they are already connected to Noxus. As you can see, of course, Noxians already conquered part of Shurima, so some Shurimans are fighting for Noxus. Also, as a
fascinating
fact,
this
for those
sticker.
of you who liked Arcane, Hex Crystals are harvested in Shurima. That's why a Shuriman expansion would be a great follow-up to Piltover and Zone. And again, that's why Riot can...
Va tas dar dalykas. Piltover in Zone galėtų būti starting tas, geimas. Jeigu jie, nes Arcane išėjo ir žmonės labiau bus, bet Demacia, Noxus ir Freljordas yra tiek kultinės vietos, kad jeigu reiktų spėti, tada visą šitą zoną turėtų paleisti. Tipo, pradžioje ir tada plėstis, aigės. Nes čia pačios tos, čia, aš nežinau, labiausiai ikoniškos. Ašė iš čia, Garina iš čia, žinai. Ir serialas buvo aplinkui šitas, vat. Ir vis tiek bus antras sezonas, turbūt nežinau apie ką, bet jau nežinau kada, bet sakė, tikrai turi būti antras sezonas. Tai jo, ir tada plės... I have no idea. Plėt, kaip gali būti įdomu.
Anyway, going west from Shurima, we arrive at Mount Dargon. This place is incredibly unique. First of all, this mountain is not natural. It was literally pulled up from the ground by celestial gods. And that's because this place serves as a portal to the celestial realm, also known as Dargon Prime. Now, because this mountain was pulled up, it also has some unique features. For example, you may find frozen lakes frozen horizontally on the mountain. And the very peak of the mountain is special too. Should a mortal reach the peak despite the brutal climate and the deadly wildlife, either they die from exhaustion, or the celestial gods deem them worthy and they become an ascended aspect. There is aspect of war, aspect of the sun, aspect of the moon, aspect of the twilight, aspect of the guardian, and so on.
Aspect of the
After
game.
people reach the peak, they become some of the strongest beings on the entire planet. So of course, the mountain is full of people who worship the celestial demigods. And I speculate this is where we could get a lot of cool armor. There are the Solari, who are devoted to the aspect of the sun. Then there are their rivals, the Lunari, who are devoted to the aspect of the moon. But also, the tribe I assume will become a playable class, the Warriors of Rakor. Of course, besides just humans, Dargon also has all sorts of furry Vastaya. Near the bottom of the mountain, you may notice that the mountain is alive. But also there are Stellarcorns, a variety of mind-bending creatures, and loads of dragons. Speaking of which, remember that this place is linked to the celestial realm. So this is where we may also meet the star-forging celestial dragon Aurelian Soul, as well as all sorts of other celestial beings. A lot of these would make for interesting bosses. In fact, the ascension of Mount Dargon would be a really cool raid. Next, on the other side of Shurima, there is Ishtal. This is a special place where people are mastering the elemental magic. They are using it for everything: fishing, smithing, walking, and this place is definitely...
Parašiau šiandien SEC, paklausiau, ar galiu iš jų imti insiderių traidų informaciją, ar nesupyks. What?
Definitely gonna be saved for an expansion. Basically,
Labas,
remember
Parin.
when Icathian asked the Watchers for help? And then that happened?
Praleidau 10
This place
sekundžių.
is everything. Place where people are mastering the element of Shurima,
Ai,
there is
aha, čia
Ishtal.
X.
This is a special place where people are mastering the elemental magic. They are using it for everything: fishing, smithing, walking, and this place is definitely gonna be saved for an expansion. Basically, remember when Icathian asked the Watchers for help? And then that happened? Ishtal was their neighbor, and after they saw the Void devour an entire kingdom, they believed the Void would soon devour the entire world. So, using their elemental magic, Ishtal built massive walls of plants around their entire region, isolating themselves from the rest of the
Cool.
world. For 3,500 years, Ishtal stayed isolated, believing that the world outside of their walls was devoured by the void. But now, very recently, some mages found out that the world outside is completely fine. So now, the Ishtali mages are slowly revealing themselves. To be honest, Ishtal is the most underdeveloped region in Runeterra. We know the region has a lot of hunting Vastaya, deadly plants and some elemental dragons, but most of the region is still a mystery to us. So at least here, Riot will have the freedom to
Expansionas,
But now, we leave the main continent to visit the last two regions.
Papingi piratai, tai yra Bilgewater.
If you like pirate adventures, this is gonna be your place. This is where we are going to explore inns and gambling dens, even some local temples worshipping the god of motion, Nagakeboros. Here we are going to fight pirates and sea monsters, sea witches, sea Vastaya, maybe some demons. And possibly we'll side with Sarah Fortune to fight the king of the pirates, Gangplank. But there's a lot more here. Last year, Riot released their RPG, which was set in Bilgewater. So not only can we already explore this place in detail, but it even has a monster journal. And at a quick glance, you can already see some really cool bosses too. However, this place is also linked to the last place I want to show you today, the Shadow Isles. See, every year the horrors of the Shadow Isles lurk out, and Bilgewater just happens to be the closest place. So every year, Bilgewater is fighting the undead. Once upon a time, the Shadow Isles used to be the Blessed Isles, a rich place full of advanced magic. Long story short, there was a young asshole king who wanted to revive his dead queen. And in the process, he accidentally released dark necromantic magic. This magic destroyed the island and made it home for undeath. In the lore, this event is called the Ruination. And because the RPG is called the Ruined King, it may not be a surprise to you that you also get to explore the Shadow Isles there. And there they have anything you can imagine. Undead horrors creeping everywhere. And should we ever venture into these islands, I have no idea whom we're going to fight. The Ruined King who caused all of this is banished elsewhere. Thresh, who siphoned his magic after he was banished, also left the Isles. And even Hecarim, the most brutal soldier of them all, is currently around Demacia. So the Shadow Isles don't currently have a main baddie. So this is where Riot could push forward some of the side characters. Now, even though these have all been the regions that are currently set up on Runeterra, Riot has already confirmed that there is a new continent further to the east. Currently, it is planned to be revealed in the upcoming Ruination novel. And so far, we know that this new continent is where the Ruined King Viego is from. And this is also where he was banished at the end of his story. All we know about that place is that it is quite mystical. There are yet more dragons here, and in fact, Kamavor, which is the Ruined King's nation, has a lot of draconic armor. So should Riot run out of places to explore, don't worry, they can always make up more. But that's all I wanted to show you today. As someone who's been following the lore of League of Legends from the very beginning, I can tell you, I'm very confident the setting of Riot's MMO is gonna be great. Their incredible writers have been preparing the world for years now. And now, it's time to harvest the fruit. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below. Because right now, I still have...
Ne, nebus taip, bet rimtai jo. Prisimenu, buvo loras Rioto. Ir tada pasamdė rašytojus, kad ten perrašė labai smarkiai. Čia labai senai. Ir nuo to laiko realiai jis yra belenkaip gerai parašytas, kad actually susijęs, ten contradictionų mažai ir panašiai, tipo, actually pasamdė tos rašytojus. Privalo būti MMO, nieks net nedvėjojo, kad eventually privalo būti MMO. Ir kada, koks, galim tik spėlioti, bet koks gali būti geras ir įdomus geimas.